We've lost religion, we've lost politics as the big drivers in our life. And Exodus, this exhibition, asks how artists are filling that space. So join me for my series of 2-minute tours to talk through each of the works in this fantastic show. This sculpture is by Dan Arps. It's called Seated Figure. Dan Arps is represented by Michael Lett in Auckland, and I love this piece. It was exhibited in Brick Bay for many months before it came to Exodus, and it's his largest bronze work to date. It's called Seated Figure because in a sense it cocks a snoot at the snobby art history world, and this began life in Dan Arps' studio as a very, very small maquette of about 5 centimeters in height. And all they've done is blow up that tiny, grotesque, and yet very endearing little maquette into a full-scale seated bronze figure. I think it's a he, looks at us in a very wistful way, pondering life, maybe pondering the meaning of art, who knows? Once again, it's very, very confronting and at the same time very endearing. And I think Dan Arps plays with these attributes quite a lot in his artwork. Welcome to the bizarre world of Ian Cheeseman. This installation was done by Ian exclusively for Exodus. It's a fascinating little space where he's used a lot of handmade objects. Ian's embodies a lot of humor in his work, and there's a terrific sense of playfulness with the viewer. This piece feels like it's a theatre scene, it's a theatrical scene, but after the lights have gone up and everybody's left and gone home, there has been some form of action taking place in this room, and that's where Ian works best, where you come into a situation and you have to play out the drama in your head about what happened here, why is there such a riot of colour. It's a magical piece of work. Dale Frank is an Australian painter, and he's one of the most exciting painters in Australia at the moment. He's represented in New Zealand by Hugo Langsford Gallery, and this piece is a stunner. It's called Chinese Landscape 6 Citibank, and it was painted, well, I say painted, it was created in 2015. Although he trained as a painter, his works are often very sculptural. And this piece fascinates me because all he's done here is dripped acid through layers of perspex to reveal another layer of perspex below it. At once, it's very, very sensual and beautiful, and on the other level, it bounces back our reflection into the eyes of the viewer. He plays with us this space between painting and sculpture and involving us in his piece of work. It's a delightful piece. Virginia Leonard is represented by Paul Nash, and she has made us this piece exclusively for the Exodus show at the Vivian. It's a sensual and wonderful piece of art, dripping in colour and sort of eye-popping candy. It's a ceramic piece which she layers with drips of thick and luscious resin. They're almost like little living jewel boxes. The pieces work as a unified whole, and yet they are actually separate components. The base is concrete. This is a single vessel here with another vessel placed inside, and then some ceramic pieces perched precariously and intentionally on the top. Virginia's work embodies a lot of pain, sometimes very personal pain. Virginia was involved in an accident many years ago, and yet they are incredibly beautiful and sensual. And it's that human tension when you look at these works. Life is never perfect, and yet that's what we find in all of Virginia's work. This is a very, very beautiful piece of work. Hugo Langsford is represented by Hugo Langsford, and he's one of the most exciting young artists in the show. He was born in 1986, and he's a multidisciplinary painter. What do we mean by that? Well, he doesn't just paint, he also stitches some of this canvas together so some of the canvas physically protrudes through the plane here. What I really like about him is this is a difficult piece of work, and at first glance you think, well, it's a bit abstract. It is quite abstracted, but it's informed a lot by mark making that you wouldn't traditionally find in a gallery. Hugo is really interested in this tension between marks and mark making that you find on things like building sites, in working class areas, and house renovations, and house building, that you would never normally associate with gallery spaces. And then he does it on a canvas and he brings it into a gallery, and of course it changes the whole perception of the mark making. You would see marks like this in everyday life and ignore them. Hugo likes to bring that into a gallery context and ask you to question that. What does it mean? What does the origin of it mean? Who made these marks? One of the other interesting things about this work for me is, if you look closely, Hugo has mixed a graphite powder. Now, what that allows us to see is these sort of big gestural swipe marks, because the other thing I see in Hugo's work is this nod towards technology, how we use screens in iPads and iPhones and that sort of thing, that constant swiping. If you look closely at this, you will see the windows shift, the planes shift, and that lovely, thick gestural mark, almost as if we're swiping our thumbs over the painting. This is a lovely piece of work, painted for the Exodus show. This little fella is Sphinx by Patricia Piccinini, and he really is the star of the show. He's a sculpture made from silicon and bronze, and he's a part of an art movement called the hyper-real, which is confronting art, which makes us really confront our ideas of reality. Sphinx makes a guest appearance in Exodus because he refers to a poem that was a bit of inspiration for the theme of the show. It's a poem by W.B. Yeats called The Second Coming. And there's this wonderful line at the end of it which says, "And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born." And Sphinx seemed to fit that part, and we are so grateful to have him in the show. It's the first time Sphinx has been shown in New Zealand, and it's a unmissable experience. People find this sculpture really confronting, and that's probably because the silicon is made to look like human flesh, and within that flesh there's hair, and that hair is also human. So when you look at Sphinx, you're not quite sure if it's real or if it's imaginary. And that's what freaks people out about this work. It really is an unmissable piece of art.